What happens when composure meets pressure in a fake living room? In 40 minutes, politeness burns off, and the exit becomes the story. The set was dressed to feel intimate. Low bookshelves. A worn Persian rug with careful vacuum lines. A perfect bowl of green apples nobody would touch. 2 armchairs angled toward each other. A small marble table between them. A big softbox window pouring calm, expensive light. No studio audience. No applause sign. No safety release. Just microphones and civility. Anderson Cooper arrived first, like always. Jacket open. Tie muted. Face warm but controlled, that careful neutrality that makes people say more than they meant to. He checked his notes twice, then set them down. A red light on a camera glowed, waiting. Off to the side. A producer murmured reminders about tone and pacing the way people whisper about weather at a gravesite. Meghan Markle entered like a cue had been called. Hair in glossy waves that caught the light. Clothes chosen like strategy. Black silk blouse that moved like liquid. White blazer that signaled authority without announcing it. She said hello like an assessment, not a greeting. The room absorbed it. She sat immediately, one leg crossing over the other in a move that felt prepared. "Meghan?" Anderson said, with the practiced, soft smile that settles governors and soldiers. "Thank you for being here." "Am I?" she said, letting her eyes move across the set like she was inspecting it. "I suppose I am." He let that slide. "We built this space to feel like a conversation, not an interrogation," he offered. "How thoughtful," she said. "Do I get a fruit basket if I pass your civics exam?" A tiny pause behind the glass. The producer looked down. Anderson's smile did not shift. "Let's start with the past year," he said. "A lot of people have opinions about you, some informed, some not. What's one misconception you'd correct right away?" Meghan tilted her head. "That I need their permission. Or yours." She held the pause on purpose. "There's an entire cottage industry built on explaining me," she went on. "It's cute. It's profitable. It's also wrong." "Wrong how?" Anderson asked. "Do you really want the full lesson?" She lifted one shoulder. "Here's the short version. I don't fit in anybody's neat little frame. Not the sweet duchess. Not the scheming villain. I am, unfortunately, a person. And people," Anderson said gently, "still live inside public narratives." "You've said that." "I've said a lot of things," she replied, her tone making the quotation marks obvious. "Are you going to footnote me before each question?" He took the sting without reacting. "No footnotes. Just context. Interviews can get difficult and, speaking from experience, sometimes they end suddenly." He let that sit, a quiet reference to a past on-air blow-up. "My hope," he said, "is that we keep talking." Meghan smiled, without warmth. "Your hope?" "Yes." "And if I don't give you that," she said, "do I go on the list of difficult women who didn't behave nicely on the living room rug?" "You can refuse anything," he said evenly. "You're here voluntarily." She said, eyes sliding to the camera. What a pretty word. Voluntarily sounds like freedom, smells like a setup. Anderson folded his hands. "Then let me ask something simple. You've launched a new project about media literacy for young people. What inspired it?" "Being misread," she said instantly, over and over, and on purpose. She leaned back. "When you turn into a Rorschach test, you either disappear," she said, "or you start teaching people what they're actually looking at." She looked at him like he was people. "You can have that metaphor. By the way, free." "It's strong," Anderson said. "Would you agree that being misunderstood and being criticized aren't always the same thing?" "I'd agree that criticism is the polite word people use after they've already decided who you are," she said. Her eyes flicked toward the apples. You put fruit on a table, call it styling, then pretend you served a meal. He considered changing direction. You've described the press as both necessary and invasive, he said. For you, what does healthy scrutiny look like? Curiosity without entitlement, she said. Questions that aren't theater. Interviews that aren't just pre-roll for some gotcha thumbnail on YouTube. Do you feel this is theater? He asked, don't you? She said, eyes bright. 2 chairs, 1 lamp, the performance of sincerity. Anderson drew in one practiced, steady breath. I'm trying to understand you on your terms, which assumes I want to be understood, she said, smooth but edged. Sometimes not being understood is safer. Then why say yes to this? His tone stayed soft, but the thread underneath had tightened. If you prefer opacity, a camera isn't your friend. I don't mind light, she said. I mind angles. Her fingers tapped the armrest, and in most rooms, she added, the angles are arranged before I even walk in. He nodded. That's fair, he said quietly. Let's rearrange them. Tell me something you haven't said anywhere else. She laughed, bright sound, cold eyes. And hand you the pull quote you came for? No. Someone in the control area swallowed. Anderson let that pass. I'm not here to collect souvenirs, he said. I'm here because people who disagree with you or dislike you still deserve to hear you directly. That's what interviews are for. People who dislike you never hear you directly, she said. They'll hear the headline that flatters their bias and calls it truth, she said. You know that better than anyone? I do, he said. And I also know substance survives headlines more than cynics admit. Hope as a business model, she said. Charming. He glanced at his notes without really looking. A question he hadn't wanted to ask this early. He asked it anyway. Some critics say your public advocacy still centers you. That the same systems you challenge end up serving your personal narrative. Is that fair, Meghan? Stillness. Not frozen alert, calculating. Like a cat deciding if the offered hand is food or insult. You're asking if I'm a hypocrite. I'm asking how you balance visibility and privacy. She took a measured beat. I balance it by refusing to audition for mercy. She leaned in then, elbows to knees, voice low and razor clean. Let me save you time, Anderson. If I speak, opportunist. If I don't, manipulator. If I smile, calculated. If I don't, ungrateful. If I sit in your tasteful chair and don't treat your questions like sacred relics. Suddenly, you get to use words like balance and critics and visibility. It's as if you're not running the same maze as everyone else. The camera felt closer. Anderson kept his eyes on hers. I respect the trap you're describing. I'm not denying it. But any honest interview presses where that trap is tightest. And the polite guest, she said, is supposed to answer. Thank you for the pressure. I'm not asking for thanks, he said. No, she replied. You're asking for compliance dressed up as candor. The apples sat between them like silent planets. Anderson's voice dropped a half step. Meghan, you've said compassion is something you practice, not something you post. What does compassion demand from you in a conversation you don't like? She smiled, slow, precise, not throwing the chair. And beyond that? Knowing where the exit is, she said. Fire codes are extremely educational. He took the joke, but not the humor. I'm trying to keep us in good faith. Good faith, she repeated. Another lovely fragrance. Spray it on a question, and it smells virtuous. She folded her arms. Ask the one you've been stroking since I walked in. He didn't blink. All right. Some viewers wonder how being exhausted by public scrutiny lines up with creating new media projects. Podcasts, series, platforms that keep you visible by design. Is that a contradiction? There's a boundary, she said. You're asking me to apologize for drawing it in Sharpie instead of watercolor? That's not what I'm asking. Of course it is, she said, sounding almost amused. You're working very hard to be the man who gently extracts confession. That's your craft. You already referenced your memorable interview, didn't you? The one that blew up. You know what happens when someone refuses to bleed on cue? The host suddenly runs out of tissues. Anderson's posture shifted a fraction. I brought that up to acknowledge my responsibility when interviews fall apart, or, she slid in, sweet as glass, to pre-frame this one. So if it goes off the rails, the audience assumes it isn't my fault. Smart. A producer's pen went crooked. Anderson sat back, choosing each word. We have the luxury of no audience tonight. No applause, no gasps. Just you and me and whatever clarity to strangers on a rug can get to. I don't need a blow-up. I don't want one. I'm honestly asking for your help to avoid it. Meghan watched him the way a hawk watches open ground. Then stop asking questions built to prove that I'm the problem. Are they built for that? Every question is built for something, she said. Yours are built to look innocent. The camera lights settled into full burn. The room still looked like a lifestyle spread. It felt like a fuse. Anderson picked up his notes, not to read them, just to slide them an inch to the left. Resetting by gesture. Let's try again, he said. Steady. When was the last day you felt unobserved? Meghan let out a small laugh. You mean right now, before you asked me to gift trap my piece for broadcast? She tipped her face toward the light. But fine. Let's pretend there's an answer. It was a morning with black coffee, a dog who doesn't read headlines, and a calendar that forgot my name. There you can package that. Thank you, he said. I didn't offer it for packaging, she said. I offered it because it sounds like a person. A person, yes, he said. Human, she repeated, tasting it. Deciding it was safe. Ask your next one, Anderson. Let's see if it bites. He did not, realizing they were already cut. Not by a question, but by the polite lie of a room pretending it could hold two clashing definitions of respect without tearing. The apples stayed. The rug held the mood. And the quiet fight, the kind you can't sell with applause, officially started. They picked back up on the floor manager's small nod and the engineer's slow hand signals. A fake calm draped back over a room that was anything but calm. The set kept performing serenity. The people didn't. Anderson's voice came down soft over something sharp. You've said boundaries are non-negotiable. For people watching who can't seem to hold theirs, what does that actually look like, beyond slogans? Meghan smoothed a non-existent crease on her blazer. A gesture equal parts elegance and warning. It looks like refusing questions that sneak entitlement in under the word curiosity, she said. It looks like saying no without writing an apology letter to the person who wanted yes. Some would call that brave, Anderson said. Others would call it evasive. And some people, she said, call it rain. And other people call it ruined hair. Perspective is loud, fair, he said. So when your critics say you invite attention and then punish anyone who pays it, there it is. She said lightly, like she'd just fished a mint from the bottom of her bag. The postcard version of me. Come admire the painting, but if you look too long, you're the villain. I'm not sending postcards, he said. I'm asking how it feels from where you sit. It feels like a trap built for women who won't perform gratitude on cue, she said. If I speak, I'm accused of selling my privacy. If I stay quiet, I'm accused of scheming. Either way, the ending is the same. I'm supposed to apologize to somebody. And do you think you owe anyone an apology? He asked quietly. She smiled, controlled, feline. Do you? He let that hang. I've corrected myself on air, he said. I've apologized when I've been wrong. How noble, she murmured. Sir Anderson of the Chiron. he didn't react to the hit. Instead, he picked up a card he hadn't meant to touch yet. "You launched a podcast positioned as elevating other people's voices," he said. It stopped suddenly. People say they miss it. Why did it end? "We learned a microphone can be both stethoscope and scalpel," she said. "Some people don't actually want the cut, even if it's meant to heal." She paused. "Also, the business meetings bored me. Are you going to punish me for saying I'm bored?" "I'm not going to punish you for being direct," he said. "I am interested in what you owe the people who walked into that space with you and left feeling cut by it. What's your obligation to them?" "My obligation," she said, "is not turning my ribcage into a public hallway. I build spaces. I am not public infrastructure." "Spaces with your name on them," he said gently. "Which is branding, not confession," she said. "I am not going to erase myself from my own work just to soothe strangers who think visibility equals vanity." He nodded once. "Let us zoom out. You're a lightning rod now. You walk into a room like this one, and everyone brings their own weather. How do you avoid becoming the storm?" "By refusing to be their umbrella," she said. "Let them get rained on. Rain is clarifying." "That sounds unsparing." "Isn't lifelong shelter," she said. "Sometimes kindness is a towel and directions to where the dryer is." Something in his posture shifted, still calm but braced. "I'm trying to meet you where you are," he said. "You keep moving the coordinates, because you keep acting like I have an address," she said. "I'm not a postcode. I'm a perimeter." He flicked his eyes toward the control room. "No cue," he continued. "You've talked about compassion fatigue," he said. "Are you feeling interview fatigue right now?" "I'm feeling the boredom of being asked to turn myself into a marketable dialect you can sell as vulnerable," she said. "Vulnerability isn't a currency I owe your vault." "I'm not asking you to cry," he said.
"I know,"
she replied. "You're asking for tidy narrative arc. Proof that your pretty set produces revelation between ad breaks." He laced his fingers again. "Meghan there," she said, leaning back. "That tone, with my name in it. The velvet hammer. Men love that one when a woman won't round off her edges for camera." He drew a measured breath. The corners of his eyes held the first trace of fatigue. He answered evenly anyway. "You're very good at hearing subtext." "After years of having it screamed as text," she said. He nodded. "Then hear this. I am not your enemy." "I already have enemies," she said. "You're just a man with a nice rug and a question that wants to pretend it's a mirror." Silence ticked. 1, 2, 3. "Can I shift lanes?" he asked. "Please," she said, bright and false. "Use your indicator. You've said your measure of success is impact," he said. "Name one moment in the last year that felt purely impactful. No backlash attached. Just the moment." She held his gaze a beat longer than comfortable, then said, "A reading corner in a school library that didn't exist before. One girl sat in it and finally breathed. No cameras, no plaque, just a chair and oxygen." "That's a good answer," he said, and meant it. "It wasn't an answer," she said. "It was a warning. Some things that matter won't survive a lower third." "I can live with that," he said. "I'll still ask, and I'll still decline," she said, pleasantly. He let out a thin smile. "So we're at stalemate, or choreography," she said. "You lead. I pivot, and the invisible audience. Oh wait, we didn't invite them. Applauds the illusion of progress." A small, nervous cough slipped out from the control room. Anderson decided to risk the one she'd basically told him not to touch. "Let's talk about accountability," he said. "Is there any part of the public friction around you that you think you've contributed to? Not by existing. Not by being a woman in public. By the way you've chosen to respond." Her face didn't move, but the air in the room tightened, and here we are, she said softly. The ritual. Confess your sins so you can be permitted credibility. It's not a ritual, he said. It's a chance to receive absolution. Blessed by cable news, Shu said. To prove I'm self-aware enough to earn softness. Meghan, he began, keeping his voice low. What I'm saying is that agency includes self-critique. Anderson, she said, voice smooth and sharp at once. If I start bleeding now, are you going to cover your rug? Don't, he said, sharper than he'd sounded all hour. Then he softened. Please, don't reduce me to that. I'm not here for a spectacle. Everyone says that before the clip goes viral, she said. Then a headline calls it a tense exchange, and the thumbnails grow like mushrooms. I can't control thumbnails, he said, calm, reasserted by habit. I can control my questions. I can control my tone. I can control the fact that I'm still listening even when you're swinging. I'm not swinging, she said, almost bored. I'm fencing. Your viewers like swords. I prefer a scalpel. We don't have viewers, he said lightly. No audience tonight, remember? We always have an audience, she said, eyes fixed on the red tally light. Even if it's just the little red eye that keeps blinking like a conscience. He put the notes aside again. His hands were empty now, resting flat on his knees. All right, he said. Let me try something almost basic. What does a good faith question sound like to you? One that isn't loaded with the expectation that I'll make your segment cleaner, she said. Ask me something you're willing to hear an unerrable answer to. He thought for a long beat. Then I'll ask this, he said. Who are you when the mic is off? Someone who doesn't have to answer that, she said, and this time she actually smiled at her own refusal. See? That felt wonderful. He let out a small laugh, real, quiet, almost surprised at himself. It did, actually. Then, carefully, I'm reaching for a bridge here. And I'm pulling up planks as you build it, she said. Not because I'm angry. Because that's how I'm wired now. Does that wiring ever relax? It naps after I walk out of rooms like this, she said. I'll send you a postcard. He looked over at the apples on the table. I don't think I'll be getting a postcard. Then frame the rug, she said. Remember it as the last soft thing between us. The tally light above the camera blinked a warning, 2 minutes to break. Anderson could feel the conversation tipping toward the kind of beat people later call the moment. He tried one more time to stitch it before it split. If you could ask me anything, he said, what would you ask? Meghan considered. Why you felt the need to bring up your famously messy interview earlier. Was that honesty or self-protection? He took it in. Both, he said. Honesty because I've failed on air. Protection because I'm afraid of failing again. She nodded, like a teacher marking a correct line. There. That's the most honest thing you've said. Then meet me there, he said. One step. She held his eyes and gave the smallest shake of her head. I don't slow dance out of sympathy. The floor manager lifted a hand. 30 seconds. The room felt smaller. When we come back, Anderson said evenly, I'm going to ask about power. Who has it in a space like this and what it costs to keep it? Meghan gave a tiny, amused smile. Perfect. I'll bill you for my answer. Why is that? Because power, she said, is the only thing in this room anyone plans to pay for. The red light dropped to black. Behind the glass, the producer let out a breath like air, escaping a tire. Anderson's jaw settled into a line that wasn't anger yet, but wasn't patience anymore. The lights hummed back on. The calm look of the set reassembled itself, but the air still held a live charge. Anderson Cooper adjusted his jacket, smoothing one cuff with the kind of controlled movement that had become habit. Meghan Markle leaned back, ankle hooked over knee, posture flawless, expression cool. Before the break, Anderson began, voice level, almost rhythmic. We touched on boundaries and responsibility. I'd like to pull back a little. Power. Who holds it, who loses it, and what it costs to hold on to it. Meghan's smile was faint, almost indulgent. Power, she said softly. Such a big, heroic word. Reporters adore it. Politicians fear it. Women are accused of hoarding it the second they stop apologizing for existing. I think that's a fair point, Anderson replied, careful. But power also has texture. It's not just handed over or grabbed. Sometimes it's performed. Her eyes sharpened. And sometimes performance is the only way people bother to listen. You act out humility. I act out control. We both know the routine. Anderson exhaled just a touch. I'm not trying to get performance. I'm trying to get truth. She let out a small, dry laugh. Truth is a performance, especially here. He held her stare, slow and deliberate. Do you ever feel that cynicism protects you but also isolates you? Do you ever feel that neutrality is just fear with better lighting? She answered, smooth, clean. Anderson blinked, not offended, just registering how precise she was. No, he said at last. I think neutrality is the last way fairness survives. Then fairness must get lonely, Meghan said. It never seems to arrive when a woman is being eaten alive by opinion. I'm not here to eat you alive, he said quietly. Of course not, she said, voice velvet with an edge. You're here to frame me. You let that sit. The silence stretched long enough to become a third presence. Then he said, I thought about canceling this interview. Her brow lifted, just slightly. Did you? Yes, he said. Because the last time I sat across from someone who treated conversation like combat, it stopped being journalism and turned into spectacle. I promised myself I wouldn't repeat that. And yet, she said, with a knowing half-smile, here we are. Maybe you actually like the spectacle. Maybe you need it more than I do. His face stayed composed, but his eyes cooled. What I need, he said slowly, is for talking to matter again. And what I need, she said, is for people to stop pretending their curiosity is noble. He leaned in, elbows on knees. You think I'm pretending? I think you're polite, she said, which is much more dangerous. Anderson let out a short, dry laugh. You know, he said, I've interviewed presidents, soldiers, people who've lived through war zones, and not one of them has talked to me like I'm the problem. Maybe, she replied sweetly. That's because none of them were used to having their own story questioned. That was the strike that found tinder. Anderson's eyes flickered, but his tone stayed level. Meghan, I'm not attacking who you are. I'm asking about choices. You speak very forcefully about truth and authenticity. You also shape your story with extreme control. That's not criticism. That's an observation. Her smile cooled. And what do you call it when men do the same? He didn't blink. Branding. She let out one sharp, humorless laugh. Exactly. When men do it, it's branding. When women do it, it's manipulation. If we shape our story, it's deceit. If we protect our image, it's arrogance. Thank you, Anderson, for proving that without even trying. I wasn't trying to, he said quietly. That's the issue, she said. You never think you are. The words sat between them like smoke. Behind the glass, the producer silently mouthed something wrap soon, but neither of them looked away. Anderson's voice dropped, almost gentle. Do you ever wonder what it's like to sit across from someone who won't let you reach them? Do you ever wonder what it's like, she asked, tilting her head, to be reached for only to be taken apart? This isn't taking you apart, he said. Of course it is, she answered. You just do it in silk gloves. A thin fracture finally ran through his patience. You came here to be heard, he said. But being heard works both ways. I can't respect your version of the truth if it won't stay still long enough to exist. Maybe my truth keeps moving because your format tries to pin it down, she said. And maybe, he said quietly, your armor keeps you from seeing that someone in this room actually tried to understand you. Meghan smiled again, sharp, worn, almost sad. Understand me, Anderson? You can't even describe me without choking on the word controversial. You call it fairness. I call it fear. He leaned back. The professionalism was still there, but thinner now, stretched over something openly human. You know, he said, I used to think the toughest interviews were with people who refused to talk. It's harder with people who only talk to listen to themselves win. The silence that followed went hard and clear. Meghan's tone softened, not apologizing, but deliberate. And I used to think journalists ask questions to learn. Now, I know they asked to confirm what they already believe. Teza nodded slowly. Then maybe we're both wrong. Unlikely, she said, with a smile cold enough to stop time. He glanced at the camera, then back at her. We'll be right back after this, he said, to no one in particular. The red light above the lens dimmed. Meghan crossed her arms. Are we done pretending this is going well? Anderson folded his notes once and set them aside. We're not pretending, he said. We're enduring. Enduring, she repeated. Finally, something I'm qualified for. He gave a faint smile that never reached his eyes. Then let's see if you can handle one more question when we come back. Meghan uncrossed her legs, adjusted her blazer, and said evenly, only if it's worth answering. The producer counted them back in with a shaky hand. The red light returned. Anderson looked up. He was still composed, but something in him had shifted. The anchor was still present. The patience was thinning. Final segment, he said, eyes fixed on her, and maybe the most honest one. She lifted her chin, unshaken. Let's hope so. Honesty's rare lately. What came next would be the break point, the instant where civility fractured and the cozy living room set became the most uncomfortable place on air. The camera lights steadied for what everyone wanted to be the last round. The air in the room felt like the pause between lightning and thunder. Anderson's tone wasn't the same. The smooth pacing from earlier was gone. He spoke lower now, stripped of the practiced softness that usually wrapped his interviews. Meghan, he began, we've talked about boundaries, truth, power, and I think people watching or listening will still be asking the same thing. What do you want from interviews like this? Her mouth curved, a slight smirk. I could ask you the same thing. What do you want, Anderson? Redemption for the last train wreck. A headline that makes you look graceful next to the woman who supposedly lost control. Anderson didn't move. What I want is conversation, not choreography. Her tone went light. Then stop treating this like a trial, and I'll stop acting like defense counsel. He leaned in slightly. You don't have to act at all. You say that? She said, tapping the armrest. But then the red light goes on, and everyone starts hunting for the moment. That's what you're here for, isn't it? A crack, a sigh. Something you can replay with dramatic music. I hate to ruin your edit plan, but I'm not breaking for your beer roll. The control room tensed. A producer silently shaped the word cut, but Anderson stayed locked. He'd been steady through disaster zones, wildfires, White House walkouts. But this wasn't danger. This was contempt dressed as poise. Meghan, he said, his voice firmer now, I've sat here while you accuse, dodge, and mock. I've given you more space than I've given anyone this year, because I actually believe people deserve the chance to be understood. At some point, he said, grace stops being grace and starts being enablement. Her eyebrows lifted. Oh, so now you're finished humoring me? Yes, Anderson answered, quiet but final. Because this stopped being a conversation 10 minutes ago. It's turned into a speech about how you're the only person who's ever been misunderstood. Her smirk disappeared. You think you understand what it's like to live under a microscope? To have everything you say twisted? I don't claim I do, he replied evenly. But I do know when basic respect is present and when it isn't. Meghan let out a sharp, almost amused breath. Respect. You mean obedience? You say you want honesty, but what you really want is humility, preferably delivered in heels. His jaw tightened. No, I want decency. I want to be able to ask a question without being treated like I'm attacking you. I want the people actually watching this because they care what you have to say to see something more than ... This. This, she repeated, motioning to herself. Define this, Anderson. Say it out loud. He hesitated only for a beat. Arrogance, he said, polished, articulate, and wrapped in white. It hit like contact. Meghan stared at him, stunned. I'm sorry. What did you just say? You heard me, he said. You've spent this entire interview talking about empathy, truth, compassion, and every single answer has been angled back to you. You deflect, you insult, and then you cover it with empowerment language. It's exhausting. Her voice dropped. You are out of line. Maybe, Anderson said. But I'd rather be out of line than out of truth. The air thinned to a blade. No one in the control room moved. Even the low studio hum felt like it paused. Oh, I see, Meghan said, her tone iced. This is where you lecture me, where the serious journalist corrects the difficult actress, tells her how to behave. Anderson shook his head. No, this is where the interview ends. He leaned back, steady now, final. Because I'm not going to sit here and let you talk down to everyone in this room, including the audience. This show is supposed to be an exchange, not a vanity exercise. You think you can just shut this down? She demanded. I am shutting it down, he replied. Right now. She blinked, thrown by how simple he made it. You're throwing me off. I'm saying we're finished, Anderson answered, sounding more tired than angry. You've said what you came to say. But if there's no room for basic respect, then there's nothing left to air. For the first time, she slipped. Not much, just enough to show impact before the steel came back. You'll regret this, she said. You realize that? Anderson stood, calm, unshaken. I've regretted bigger things, he said. But I've never regretted drawing a boundary. Meghan rose too, chin high, fury tight behind control. Do you have any idea how many people would kill to sit here? I do, he said. Maybe next time, let one of them take the chair. She stared at him, disbelief working through anger as she searched for a final strike that would land. Unbelievable, she muttered, ripping off her mic. Anderson turned slightly toward the crew. We're clear. The red light on the main camera cut out. Meghan started toward the door, heels loud against the studio floor. Halfway there, she stopped, turned back, and said, You know something, Anderson? For someone who claims to care about truth, you get uncomfortable pretty fast when you hear it. He met her stare. And for someone who claims to care about kindness, he said evenly, you abandoned it the second you sat down. She didn't answer. She left. The door shut behind her with a soft, final click. Anderson let out a long breath. Then he turned to the control room and said, almost flat, All right. Roll the climate recovery segment. We're already behind. One of the producers hesitated. Do you want to address what just happened on camera? No, he said. The footage says everything. And within hours, it would. Clips were everywhere. Anderson Cooper loses patience with Meghan Markle. But the posts and headlines all missed the real center of what happened. They'd talk about the blow-up. They wouldn't talk about the slow break. The quiet, careful civility that snapped. A line held, then enforced. That night, Anderson walked out of the building alone. The city outside moved like nothing had happened. No outrage, no debate, just traffic and lights. He looked up at the skyline, steady. Not every interview ends in revelation, he thought. Some end as a reminder that respect is not negotiable, not for royalty, not for celebrity, not for anyone with a camera on them. If this hit you, like the video, drop a comment. Who handled it better, Anderson or Meghan? And make sure you're subscribed. More intense moments from the most unforgettable interviews are coming next. Stay with us,